Hey guys, we're looking at Chapter 8, Section 8, which is going to finish up this particular chapter where we're going to be talking about factoring by grouping. So here is what you're going to learn is to factor higher degree polynomials by grouping. So go ahead and pause, and you'll want to copy all this down. This is going to be the steps that we're going to use today. And you just go through these. So the first thing you check is factor out the GCF. If you can, you do that. If you can't, you just go to the next step. If the polynomial has two terms or three terms, look for a difference of two squares, perfect square trinomial, or a pair of binomial factors. If the polynomial has four or more terms, group terms, and factor to find common binomial factors. And then as a final check, make sure there are no common factors other than one. So going through these steps in this order will help you do what we're going to do today. So let's go ahead and keep moving. This is true how I view. That's a pug. That's a Doberman Pinscher. There's a beagle. We got one of those that live behind me and he barks all the time. I don't really care for him that much, but I like dogs. Here is how I view cats. That's a cat. That's a cat. Here's another cat. There's a cat. That's a cat. This one is clearly a cat. All right, so factoring a cubic polynomial. It says find the factored form. So when we're doing this, what we're going to be looking at is to group different things. So here's what I mean. Just like when we had the other stuff where I'd have like a squared, or let's do this. Like I might have like 5x squared plus 3x minus 9x plus 2, and I would go ahead and set these things apart by putting parentheses around them. That's what you're going to do with these when they have four terms. So I'm going to set these apart with parentheses. All right, first I check, are there any GCFs I could take out? No. Then the next thing I do is that. So this, I could pull out a 3n squared. And if I pull out 3n squared from this, I'm left with n minus 4. And then over here, if I pull out, I can pull out a 2. And I'm left with n minus 4. What I'm looking for is, can I do that so that I get a common binomial term? So here's my common binomial term. This is going to work exactly like we were working on the other ones. I'm going to write this first one out in the front, 3n squared plus 2. And then what I'm left with is the n minus 4. So there we go. There is how you would do that. Here's one for you to try. Go ahead and pause. The answer will be up in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's what I got. The 2t squared plus 5 and the 4t plus 7. Hopefully you got the same thing. If not, go back and check your work. Let's keep moving. How to factor completely. So the first thing that you need to do is identify a GCF. So I'm looking, what are all of these divisible by? So the GCF for this would be 4q. And if you don't remember how to do that, go back a few sections and it tells you how to do that. I want to say it's section 4, but it might be 3 in chapter 8. So I'm going to factor that out first. So I'm going to have 4q in the front. And then I'm going to write what's left on all of these. So q cubed minus 2q squared plus 3q minus 6. Now the next step that I'm going to do is what we just did. I'm going to offset these. So I'm going to group this one. And then I'm going to group this one. All right, so I'm going to keep that 4q in the front. And then here, and I'm going to put what's called a bracket on the outside of this. All right, so what do these both have? Well, they both have a q squared, which leaves me with q minus 2. And then what do these both have? They both have a 3, so plus 3. And that leaves me with a q minus 2, which means I could pull out that q minus 2. So I'm going to have 4q, and then q squared plus 3, and then q minus 2. All right, so that is factoring that out completely. So this part inside the brackets is exactly what we were doing on that previous slide. The only difference here is I got to find the GCF first. Always look for a GCF that can be pulled out. Always look for that. And if you can, pull it out. It makes the number smaller, easier to work with, easier to see different things. So let's keep going. Here's one for you to try. Go ahead and pause. The answer will be up in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here is what I got. Go back and check if you didn't get the same thing. Let's keep moving. All right, so let's find the dimensions of a rectangular prism. To find a prism, if it's rectangular, is going to be the base times the height times the width. All right, it's three-dimensional, and you may use different terms, length times width times height, something like that. What you need to know is that it's three things that are being multiplied. It's a cubic dimension. So a rectangular prism has a volume of 6x cubed plus 19x squared plus 15x. What expressions can represent the dimensions of the prism? Use factoring. So we're going to be using what we just did. So let's write it out. 6x cubed plus 19x squared plus 15x. First thing, are there any GCFs? Yes, there is. Just one. It's the x. So I'm going to leave everything else in there. So I get 6x squared plus 19x plus 15. And now I have a trinomial here that I need to factor out. So I list the factors of 6 times 15, which is 90. And I'm looking for factors that add together to equal 19. So, well, that's really easy. I kind of see that very quickly. I'm going to skip some steps here and just say, well, that's 9 times 10. 9 times 10 is 19. So there's my two factors. So let's go ahead and write this out. I'm going to have 6x squared plus 9x plus 10x plus 15, and then I'm going to group them, just like we've been doing. So here I have, in that first one, I have a 3 and an x that can be pulled out. That leaves me with 2x plus 3. And then over here, it looks like I have a 5 that could be pulled out, and that leaves me with a 2x plus 3. And now I just rewrite it. So I have x, I'll put my 3x plus 5 first. And then I'll finish off with the 2x plus 3. All right, so that's what I got. Make sure you're taking good notes on that one. There's a few steps on these, so you need to be really, really careful. Here's one for you to try. Go ahead and pause. The answer will be up in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here is what I got. Check your work against mine, and if you got any mistakes, try to find them and correct them. That's it for today, so not too long of a lesson. Hopefully you took good notes. I'll see you all in class.